Robbie Jerrom, Principal Technologist for AI at Red Hat, shares insights on the evolving AI landscape, the role of open source in enterprise adoption, and how businesses can navigate challenges in security, scalability, and hybrid cloud integration. So, welcome and thank you so much for attending this interview today, Robbie.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's good to be here.
With over 30 years of experience, how have you seen the landscape of enterprise AI and open source innovation change?
Great question. It's obviously it's accelerated massively over the last 2 years, but we've been seeing the embracing of open source really growing over the last 30. I mean, ultimately, when we started with Linux and open source many years ago, we were kind of the outliers. No one really understood how we were going to sort of contribute to free software and how that was all going to work. But as the explosion of cloud and the understanding that actually if everyone can see the software, we can trust it, we can add our own value to it. It just made innovation that much quicker, much easier. And so that collaborative effort has continued into AI and open source AI and open data. And it's accelerated because back when we weren't sure how Linux kernels were built and things, we could look and understand it. It's the same with AI today. We can take an open source AI model, we can look at its training data, we can get a feel for how we trust it, and if we want to contribute to that model itself from a knowledge perspective, we have the ability to do so. So if I know something that it doesn't know, I can say, hey, look, this is how this widget works, and I can provide that knowledge to those systems. And you can't do that with closed systems. You can only do that with open source. So it's just growing. It's getting bigger and better and more exciting. And we're seeing with AI that's critically important to enterprises because you have to be able to trust the model that is answering questions for your customers, for your business, for your insights, whatever that use case is. And that's critical. If you can't see it and understand it, then it's hard to trust it.
And open source, as you've mentioned, has played a major role in advancing AI, but also enterprise AI. How do you see open source tools and platforms shaping the future of this scalable AI?
It's the same play as almost Linux, right? We're already seeing the open source tools, frameworks from Meta and open source things like Llama Index, IBM's Granite models and InstructLab. They're providing tools for any enterprise to get started very easily. So it used to be a big learning curve to get into machine learning and AI, and it was very complicated, and the stacks were very difficult to use. With these new open source tools, I can download InstructLab and I can start on my laptop and start learning how to build a model, how to do something at small scale, whether I'm a developer using a model in application or whether I want to add knowledge to a model. And then I can move that same tool set into the enterprise and run it on a Kubernetes platform in my data center or in a cloud. So that consistent experience is driving that rapid innovation. So it's just making the tools accessible from someone that wants to learn to going full scale, running a full team, and having that consistent experience. And that's what we're seeing with open source is run it little, run it on a gaming GPU. Okay, now run it on a cloud, run it in data center on really big clusters. It's the same hands-on experience. So that learning curve has really come down with open source.
And with this open source and the access that organizations now have, how can open source AI allow organizations to innovate and what strategies can address common concerns about security and support, for instance?
Another good question. Lots of good questions today. I mean, the innovation piece is all around some of the tools and just thinking about what you might be able to do with AI as a line of business. And we're quite familiar with that now. I mean, individuals, we've played with things like ChatGPT or Copilot, and we're kind of getting a feel for, how AI can work day to day for us as individuals. And that maps across the enterprise. How can I deliver a better experience? But then you have the concerns around security, supportability, certainly privacy and data privacy is a huge one for enterprises. So what we're seeing is organizations are reshaping a little bit to have an AI center of excellence or sometimes they're like an AI council or board, which consists of not just technologists and developers, but people from HR, people from legal, people from other lines of business. So those leaders are discussing how an organization should embrace AI, what policies should they have around ethical use of AI, when it shouldn't be used, especially when it comes to sort of European regulations around data privacy, for example. So that council of so-called experts, sometimes they're just enthusiastic people. I've been involved in a few myself, and I consider myself fairly enthusiastic on these things. Um, that helps guide enterprises on how they can best take advantage before we even get to the technology. It's more could we, should we, before we start, throwing lots of resources at it. And that's the best part to sort of adopt. That helps you address security concerns and support concerns and data and ethics before you start spending money on resources and focusing developer and other resources at these things. So that's kind of where we've seen enterprises and organizations move forward very quickly, is start with, should we and how could we, and then move on from there.
And so moving on a little bit, private generative AI is increasingly being explored by enterprises. What unique opportunities does it offer, and how can businesses balance innovation with data privacy? You talked about a little bit about that just now, but
Yeah, absolutely. We'll come back to it. It's one of my favorite topics. I mean, I'm a strong advocate around privacy and especially data security for individuals and organizations. And that's what's driving a lot of the private generative AI conversations. Is we have these amazing foundational models, these frontier models that know an awful lot about an awful lot, but they don't know how an enterprise works, how my organization works, how my development team works, all my internal projects, my internal knowledge that makes my company doesn't exist in these models. And I want to be able to take advantage of that, to take advantage of generative AI. The models need to understand my terms and how I speak and what's okay to communicate to my customers and what's not, both in terms of linguistics as well as knowledge, right? So being able to take that foundational model and teach it, almost onboarding it like a new hire into a company and saying, right, this is how we do things, this is how we work, this is how our products work, this is how our development processes work. Here's a whole bunch of phrases and terms you won't have heard before because they're unique to us. Being able to train that into a foundational model and then connect it to, company data such as Jira environments or just private GitHub repos mean that the AI is now useful. And now I can scale it. I can make that individual that I've onboarded useful across the enterprise, and I can deploy it in a private data center, in an internal system. When I've got confidence, I can push it out to a hybrid environment and scale it up to work with any cloud and my customer facing stuff. I mean, we've seen some terrible mistakes in the past where companies have gone in and just released an AI chatbot into their customer facing without providing that training and security and knowledge. And that's how we ended up with some of the examples we've seen with people being able to negotiate cars for $1, for example, and things like that. So that privacy, that learning how to do things, teaching it how we do things, is critical to success. Ultimately, it's take the AI, make it yours, make it understand what makes you guys special as a company, and then start using it for things. That way, it's not going to go off and share things or tell things that you don't want to represent your organization.
And moving on a bit to hybrid cloud, it's become essential for enterprise AI strategies. What are the most important considerations when building AI platforms for hybrid environments?
The one that comes up most with that is consistency. So we have a tremendous amount of choice when it comes to AI services and capabilities. And each hybrid cloud environment, each hyperscaler has got different capabilities. They're all fantastic, but they're all different for each cloud. And that introduces complexity in an already fairly complex environment. And if the models are different, they have to be trained differently, tested differently. You iterate on them differently. So the responses are different. And that can be a challenge for organizations that have, a multi-cloud property policy, a hybrid cloud policy, or even if they have part of that hybrid cloud strategy includes their private data centers. That consistency of a foundational model that we've trained on our enterprise data and we've connected to our enterprise data is really important. Otherwise, if I ask a question and it goes to one hyperscaler, the response is different to another, and that's going to confuse my customers or my internal users. So really the key is consistency. Consistency of user experience, consistency for the IT ops folks that run the platforms, and then consistency of model choice. That's going back to open source models and being able to see how they're built and see how they respond and control them. So if you want to move to a new, better, shinier model, you get to do it on your terms after you've evaluated it, as opposed to a tick box that magically upgrades the service. So that's a big concern and a big sort of focus for enterprises, is how do I get a consistent AI experience? And you can do it with hybrid, but you have to build that consistent platform on top of the hybrid cloud to do it.
How can organizations navigate the complexities of adopting AI in hybrid cloud environments to achieve their business goals? So number one would be consistency, I'm guessing.
I mean, the first step is really starting small with business goal. So the getting started, don't try and boil the ocean on day one. Create a small service, an internal service, and then that helps you adopt it. That lets you learn how to tune a model that's connected to your data, and that success grows with other organizations. One of the biggest challenges with enterprises adopting a hybrid approach to cloud, hybrid approach to AI, is proving that first use case. And once you've proved that, it grows from there. Oh, this line of business has got a chatbot that works and it's really cool, or they've got a help support system that works and is really cool. It becomes famous, it grows, then you scale it, and other lines of business want to know how you achieve that. And that generates a center of excellence and sort of buzz around the technology. So that's how you kind of embrace it and start to scale, and then hybrid cloud, it's consistency again. Push it out across multiple clouds, scale the solution to demonstrate the value. And that's ultimately what it is. Start small, start with a small business goal. Don't go in and say, right, we're going to AI the whole world. That's where we've seen the most success, is that small steps, learn how to do something and then grow it from there. That's the same approach we took with hybrid cloud to a certain extent. Push out small applications across multiple clouds, learn how to do it, then move the big stuff.
What are the biggest challenges in operationalizing AI at scale, and how can businesses overcome them to achieve sustained value?
One of the biggest challenges as you start to operationalize is concerns around cost. And the cost of running AI services at scale when you're using lots of GPUs, lots of cloud resources, or even services that you pay by the request. As something becomes successful, you're using more resources. So that controlling of costs is a key element of that. And we're seeing organizations that are being successful kind of forward thinking and saying, right, okay, do we need an AI model that knows all of internet knowledge and can answer questions about absolutely anything? Or should we refocus on a smaller model that doesn't cost as much to run? We can train on our own data, we can control our own destiny. Back to that, take it, make it yours, strategy really. Because if you take a smaller model, it's very capable. Some of the smaller models are, comparable to things like ChatGPT for particular tasks. So take a smaller model, think about the task it's going to be. Is it a small support chatbot? Okay, in which case it doesn't need to know War and Peace or the football scores from 30 years ago. It needs to understand how your product works, how your support processes work, and your internal knowledge bases. So long as the model is sufficient to understand the languages that you speak and your customers speak, connect it with your data, small models are significantly smaller to run, they're much easier to train, and they're much easier to host wherever you want to host them. So we're starting to see that as a control point. Small model that does chatbot, small model that helps my developers code applications and is trained to use Perl and Python and the languages that I use. We've had a customer that likes, or they have an internal language which doesn't exist on the internet. So they're looking at how they can train a model that understands their programming language, which is unique to them, to help their developers. 3 smaller models that will all run on one GPU versus a large model that runs across multiple GPUs. It's a way of controlling costs, it's a way of understanding and fine-tuning particular user experiences.
That's so true. And then off the back of what everyone speaks about AI and how it's developing and how organizations can implement it, we also do have to address a little bit about sustainability and ethical considerations. So my question to you is, as AI adoption grows, how can organizations ensure their approaches are ethical, responsible, and sustainable?
Cool. Well, we've spoken a little bit about the concept of an AI council or board, and that is a critical element of the ethics and responsibility around AI. I mean, in Europe, we're seeing more regulation coming in around, what is acceptable use of AI, what data we're allowed to use as UK citizens or European citizens on use of that data, where that data can be sent for processing. So we're seeing that legal framework come in, but as always, the legal frameworks often trail behind the technology. Not as fast with AI. I think we're kind of, on the pulse a little bit there when it comes to legislation. But having that ethical council that lays out that rules, that guidance set, and often that's a document. This is what is acceptable to us as an organization, helps you tick that ethical box. So that when a customer does come to you or an auditor comes to you and says, what's your position on this? You already have it written down, the same as a company strategy. This is our AI strategy. And that applies both to usage of AI from customer data or in products, but also for employees. What can you use AI services for if you're working in marketing and you're creating some material, or you're writing code and you're writing proprietary code that is unique instead of open source, like it should be. Can you use AI chatbots or AI code assistants to do those kind of things? So those policies help deliver ethical and responsible use of AI. The sustainability angle, I think that's obviously a challenge because of the cost of GPU and the power of GPU. I think we're going to start seeing that come down as we become better at building the generative AI models and managing their sort of architectures. But equally, running smaller models that are focused on a particular task that are open source and you can train yourself, they don't cost as much to run. So you've got control over some of that sustainability by saying, right, we're going to run a small one, we're going to run 4 small ones, and we know exactly how much power that's using, instead of one great behemoth that knows everything about everything. So there are things we can do to kind of look at the sustainability angle. I think we can do more. We can always do more with sustainability, but open source models, knowing how they're built, being able to optimize them as a community is a step in the right direction to building that really efficient code that we can run on smaller GPUs and to get more out of it.
What industries do you believe are set to see the most transformative impact from AI and open source innovation?
It's a difficult one. I had a friend of mine at NVIDIA ask a similar question. I asked a similar question of him. I said, what are the best use cases for AI? And his response was, I don't know, tell me the use cases for electricity and we'll go from there. And it gave me pause for thought, because I thought, well, AI is impacting every industry. Everything from agriculture and farming right through obviously to technology industries and obviously pharma and things like that. So I think we're all seeing impact, whether that's just using AI to help analyze existing data or fully embracing it to change how we do business. I think the open source piece is going to be critical. We're seeing organizations that haven't traditionally really been involved in open source getting more involved with open source AI, just because it's interesting and new, I think. So there isn't any particular industry I think that we're going to see. I think we're going to see commonalities between different industries. I mean, IT, of course, we embrace everything and we want to run everything all the time and do stuff. But where we're seeing models being created that are being used for agriculture and for, I mean, farmers, an easy one, so is FSI. But these industries that have lots of data, they've suddenly got the ability to take that data and turn it into something more exciting. And I'm going to come back to agriculture again. So I guess maybe agriculture is the one I see most, because they have a tremendous amount of data from, farming, from tractors that gather soil information, and being able to predict and, effectively predict how that farm is going to perform over the next 12 months is critical to their success. So those industries that are impacted by, weather, energy, quality of, chemicals in the soil, that's where we're seeing a lot of the sort of AI transforming things. And then other industries where you wouldn't expect, like civil engineering, where you have to examine the quality of concrete in a building. It used to be you take lots of photos of the building, and now we can run a drone over it, and the drone will highlight faults in the concrete and the quality of the concrete. So we're seeing it everywhere, and I think it's only going to get sort of faster, quicker, better. To be perfectly honest, the innovation. Every time I look at something, there's a new innovative way of doing something. Writing code, analyzing music, optimizing video, understanding patterns of concrete or soil. It's really exciting.
And so for organisations that perhaps haven't yet picked it up, or maybe industries that are looking to get involved with AI, what advice would you give to organisations just beginning their journey with AI and hybrid cloud technologies?
So start small. Start with a small team of focused individuals that are just trying to discover what's out there. And the most success we come with is when that group includes people from lines of business that understand not just the technology and know all about hybrid cloud, but understand tractors or communications or concrete, because it's those individuals that have the insights into what you might be able to use AI for. The technologists can sit them down and say, hey, look, this is a chatbot, this is how AI works. But they're the ones that ask the really compelling questions, and they kind of lean into it and go, oh, can this AI do this thing? Can it understand a picture of concrete and say this is broken? Or can it help me write some code that doesn't exist anywhere else? And those questions start to drive those use cases. And that's where you get the sort of center of excellence and someone starting small with something. The hybrid cloud approach, adopting the hybrid cloud strategies, they're a good way of actually rapidly onboarding and trying things really, really quickly and iterating on them. But that risk of sort of lock-in to a particular cloud service and back to the kind of open source concept needs to be part of that kind of guidance and strategic paper, if you like. Try things out, but we're an open source organization. We like to contribute, or maybe they're not, but that should be part of the thought as well.